So this morning, I'm happy to introduce a Chautauqua favorite. Betsy Burgeson is one of our treasures here, as many of you know. She attended SUNY Fredonia, and after receiving her BS in Earth Science and Biology education, she moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, where she was director for the BioVan program at the Zoo and Aquarium. She first started teaching about water quality and the importance of our actions along the shorelines at that time. Then she came back home to Chautauqua County and taught biology at Panama Central School and was the program coordinator for the Chautauqua County Master Gardener program. In January 2015, she was hired as the supervisor for the gardens and landscapes here at the institution, and has been responsible for designing and overseeing 24 of the 31 rain gardens on the grounds. Blue Thumb Gardening, her title, is Gardening for Water Quality, and is the basis for every decision made within the Gardens and the Landscapes Department. Betsy lives in Panama with her husband, 3 children, 2 dogs, 4 cats, and a goat. Betsy Burgeson.
The goat does not live in our house with us. So the other ones do. We let the children come in every now and then instead of in the barn. I have a little bit of a louder voice, so if I squeak or do anything, let me know. Just as everyone, the past year has been kind of a turn upside down kind of year and learn all new things. What better topic than Blue Thumb gardening? A lot of people haven't really heard of it, although it really is just a common sense thing in the back of our mind. And along with changing our mindset, have to change how we do presentations. So along with you, I'm kind of learning this all too. We'll see if it works, and any feedback that you can give myself, the CLSC Science Group, Science Circle, and especially for those of you who are signing in from home, let us know what works and maybe what doesn't work. I'm interested to know if everybody can hear me at home as well. So let's see if I can. Fingers are crossed. Oh, we're almost there. Okay, now I'll try to take myself off the screen. Yes, step 1 done. Whew. So welcome. Yeah, today's topic is Blue Thumb gardening, and it's just basically planting for clean water. I have to joke, I was so excited about coming out and talking because I'm a talker by nature. I was an educator, I still am. And with all the different presentations that I normally do in a year, 2020 was rough on me as well as everybody else. So when they asked me to do a presentation, I was so excited. You're the first presentation I've done in a couple years. And the other day I sent my slideshow to Bob and he responds, so your presentation is like 30 to 45 minutes. I think 300 some odd slides might be a little much, but so I did reduce it. I should be done by 2 or 3 this afternoon. You guys will be good to go. So my name is Betsy. I'm the supervisor of gardens and landscapes here. And this is something, when I was teaching high school biology, you're trying to make that connection. And that's what Blue Thumb gardening really is. It's about us reconnecting. And it's interesting too, the timing of things, because 2020, we missed so many people in our lives, and getting back and making reconnections. Well, it's not just about reconnecting to our friends and our family. It's about reconnecting to the land around us, to the earth. I tried to find supplies for gardens this year, material supplies, and places have been sold out because so many people have taken up gardening. And I think that's fantastic. But we really are connected all over to everyone and everything on this earth. So it's when you tug on one thing or you remove one thing, you're affecting everything else. So why should you have a blue thumb? You're never changes unless there's some kind of meaning behind it. So why have a blue thumb? What is the problem? What is it that we're trying to fix? Well, we've developed a lot of land, and I mean a lot of land, a lot of hardscaping, right? What the world looks like today is completely different than what it looked like even 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago. The problem is that water is no longer infiltrating. That's our key thing. That right there, that word is what the Blue Thumb program is all about. How do we get water to infiltrate the right way? Because when it doesn't, then what happens is the water swooshes by, picks up everything in its path, carries those pollutants, the excess gunk into our waterways. And that's when our waterways become impaired. We know of the issues that are going on in Chautauqua Lake. We've all seen them. We've all smelled them. We've all probably even tasted them, because anything that goes into Chautauqua Lake affects our health. It affects our drinking water. It affects the wildlife in there. It affects our ability to go swimming, our ability to go enjoy boating on the lake. So we talk about a watershed, and it's hard, you know, people thinking about the lake. It's hard to picture somebody up, you know, even the top of the golf course, that what they're doing up there is affecting what's down at the bottom of the hill. So to understand or to make that connection, you really have to understand what a watershed is. And the best way to do it is just think of it as a bathtub. You know, anything, I don't know, summertime, I wash my kids and woo, all that gunk, what's left at the bottom of the pool. Think of that as our lakes, our streams. A puddle has a watershed, a small little body of water. Everything has a watershed. It's where does that water drain? So it's the area around a common point that the water all drains into, usually named for the body of water to which it drains. The watersheds of Chautauqua County, well, this is a broader sense here. But if you drive from Fredonia, or from here over to Fredonia, over to Westfield, let's just go over Westfield. You go up this big hill and then you look out and, oh, beautiful Lake Erie. What you're driving over is the escarpment there. That is the divide between our watershed, the Chautauqua Lake watershed, and the Lake Erie, or the Great Lakes watershed. So you go up to the top of the hill, pour a little bottle of water out. If it goes to the north side, it's going to go into Lake Erie. And if it goes to the south side, it's going to come down into Chautauqua Lake. So anybody that's up in Mayville, in Westfield, the top of that hill, you know, big oil spill up there. All right, there's bad accident, something like that. All that stuff is going to run down and into Chautauqua Lake. What we do here on our land, and it's that connection again. What do we do on our land will affect the water. So anything we can do to help the land will affect the water in a positive sense. So think of this. This was down in Jamestown a few years ago, and I just saw it gushing in this whirlpool going around and around and around, storm drain. And then I started thinking, ew, I just saw dogs walking past there. And I know that there was some litter flying down by there. And I know there were leaves in there. And who knows what else? I don't really want to know. But I was the watershed educator for the Watershed Conservancy for a few years when I first returned to the area. And there was a huge aha moment when I realized that those storm drains, they don't go into some place and get magically treated and beautiful clean water goes out into our lakes. Whatever goes in those storm drains goes into our lakes. Chautauqua Institution has been putting in catch basins under a lot of our storm drains as one of the ways to manage what is going into our lake and to help kind of filter out that stuff. But a lot of the storm drains in your hometowns, here at Chautauqua, here in Mayville, there's no stormwater drain police that stand there and catch everything, whatever's going in there. So that dog waste, litter, leaves, that's what's in Chautauqua Lake. So what can we do? What little things can we do to change that? Because this is I like this visual. That right there, you've got yard waste, pesticides, fertilizers, pet waste. That looks like a tasty cup of water to me. But what this means, not only, human health, okay, but it's drinking water costs. Anything that's there, Chautauqua Institution, we have our own water treatment center. But anything that's in the water now has to be filtered out, and everything that you put in adds up to more and more costs. So what can we do on our own properties and our own lives to stop any of that stuff going in? Anything you do is going to help out everyone in the long run, and it's going to help out our drinking water costs. Here's another thing. I talked about connections. It's not just our connection to our own land. It's not just our connection to Chautauqua Lake. That cup of water, if you could call it water, of gunk, we are connected. We are the top of the Mississippi watershed, Mississippi River watershed, and the Ohio River watershed. It is pretty impressive to think that you could start here in Western New York. We are literally the start of it. You go up Westfield, you send a little rubber ducky down the hill. Hypothetically speaking, he could swim down and get into Chautauqua Lake or get carried by it. He could go all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. You can actually take a canoe, from what I understand, 2,200 miles and through 12 different states. So not only are we going to impact this area, we also have a way to impact, for better or for worse, 12 different states, 2,200 miles of shoreline, because even streams, the little tributaries, the rivers, those are shorelines. So again, water quality affects the wildlife habitat, the aquatic plant growth. We see massive blooms that happen, the algal blooms. So that's all based on water quality. We see the big growth of aquatic weeds that have to be cut or managed somehow. Sometimes it makes it so you can't even drive a boat out there. It affects recreational activities, the boats, your human health. They close the beaches once or twice a summer. The way this heat is going this year doesn't look so good for having beaches open all season long. Drinking water treatment costs, we talked about that. But a big one here, tourism. I mean, Chautauqua Lake is a huge draw for the tourism industry. Without it, or as it becomes impaired, we're losing the people coming in here. They don't want to come to a dirty, nasty looking lake that smells and that all the beaches are closed on. They want to come up here to enjoy things. And if we can do stuff on our own properties to help that, that helps everyone else, because it comes down to property values as well. If Chautauqua Lake declines, our property values go down as well. So again, whichever one matters to you. And this is what I was talking about at the beginning. I can give you 4 million different reasons why you should, well, maybe 2 million, but it's not a matter of why I think clean water is important. It comes down to you. What is clean water worth to you? And this was a picture of my little niece. Oh, now she would be really embarrassed that I use this, because she's 16 now. She just turned 16. But this just really stands out to me. This was when I was doing Watershed talks before. This was the photo. And it really hit me hard, because she was swimming in the lake. I thought, wow, all that stuff from that storm drain up there that I just saw. And now she's in there just happy as can be, totally unaware of what's in the water. And it makes you sad. So what's it worth to you? I grew up in this area. I grew up going to Chautauqua Lake, swimming in it every day I could in the summer. I have 3 children now who want to do the same. And when they come up to club, or when they come up to children's school, and then, oh, sorry, the lake is closed because of health hazards, that makes me really sad. So for me, my personal reason, my personal connection is I want Chautauqua Lake to be around for my kids. I want them to be able to enjoy it the way I did when I was little. Once we make that connection, that's when people become stewards of the lake. That's when stewardship really takes hold. And this quote, when I was giving talks before, I'd go out to schools, and I remember being out at Bemis Point Elementary School, and I always started asking the little elementary kids, well, what do you think? Here's a big word, stewardship. What do you think that means? I'm telling you, this 3rd grader blew me away. Here was his answer: taking responsibility for the actions and for our actions, and doing what we can to protect the gifts we're given. I was like, oh, wow, that's better than anything I could have ever put up. And I just have been so impressed with that. And it has stuck with me, because the gifts we have been given is Chautauqua Lake in this area. What a spectacular body of water. It's just amazing. mean, the north end is a total different ecosystem than the south end. And all the things, the people, the family it has brought together, the people, the animals that survive and that need it, it is a gift, a true gift. So here's our solution. Okay, phew, I'm doing all right. Blue thumbs, right? Ta-da, see my little guy, he turned his blue thumb, or his green thumb blue. He's ready to go. It's basically just creating gardens and landscapes, thinking of our land, thinking of our homes, thinking of our properties, thinking of our schools, our buildings, our businesses. What can we do? There's that word again, to give water a chance to infiltrate. How are we going to get that water to soak into the ground? What can we do to reduce that runoff? What can we do to reduce pollutants? And people don't often think, I mean, you go out and you spray something, you want to kill off, some grass that's in your stones, or you want to, you see bugs on the trees. The institution has really taken a hard policy on what chemicals we can and we can't use, because that affects, it gets washed down. It doesn't just kill that bug and then poof, disappear. It goes into our waterways. So whatever you are applying on your lawn, or whatever your landscapers are applying on their lawn, or whatever your neighbors are applying to their lawn, you should know what it is. You should know what it does. And you should choose whether or not to keep using it, because those excess fertilizers, even something that, it's a nutrient, those excess nutrients are what causes, they're considered a pollutant because they cause big blooms. Now they become a pollutant when it's excess. So, if you apply, if it says, oh, put a pound of fertilizer on this area. Ooh, if I put 10 pounds, it'll be better. No, put a pound. Do what the labels say. And if we do these little things, then waterways can become improved. Our lake will start to heal. That's the beauty of nature. It has a way of healing itself. So how do you turn your green thumb blue? Or it could be a brown thumb, a black thumb, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of things you could do. You don't have to be a gardener or a landscaper, though I really encourage you to get into it. But you don't have to be to make a difference and to have a blue thumb kind of mindset. It's changing our way of thinking. I mean, everything else has changed in the past 2 years or past year and a half. Why not add one more thing to it? Change the way we look at our gardens and our landscape. Think of it differently. And what's interesting is, think of it as you were when you were 3 or 4 or 5. Think of it as running through fields. Think of it as going to, a natural area, playing in a stream. That's what we want to think about. Those are not two of my daughters. Those are my 2 daughters. Then I have an older son, but I just love this picture. My daughter Lily right there. I don't know if you can see it. There's a monarch butterfly, right? If we bring nature back, we think of gardens in a sense of restoring those relationships. We get that wonder. We get that amazement. You get to become a kid all over again, because you'll be amazed at what comes back into your landscape. You'll be amazed. Even businesses, big, tall buildings, you start to put some of nature back in around those buildings, you'll be amazed at what comes back. And the gardens and the landscapes, meeting nature halfway, I like that, because sometimes, you hear people will say all native plantings, all this, go totally wild. But realistically, that's kind of a hard concept to do and to put in your brain. You don't need to go all out. You need to go a little out. So it's just, how can we make that link, reinforce the garden and our native landscapes? So the picture there is University Beach Hillside. A project that turned out way better than I ever hoped. One of those ones like finger crossing. Oh my gosh, this looks like a mud pit in 2015. I hope nobody is walking by. Oh, only 10,000 people are walking by every day looking at this mud pit, and then to see what it has become and how people comment that it's so wild, but yet it's so beautiful and so many blooms, and that's it. How can we put nature and the native landscape back into our gardens? How do we make it a little more wild, but keep it looking like a garden? in nature, now I just read a book over the in the off season this year called Planting in a Post-Wild World, and it was by Claudia West. Phenomenal book. I saw her speak a few years ago. Finally, my kids are old enough. I had more than a 5-minute break. I could read this book, and it changed my view and my thinking. One of those aha moments, like, duh, how did I not see this before? I'm a gardener, I'm a landscaper, I'm out there, and I've never even realized it. But the native landscape, you have all these layers. Nature abhors a vacuum. You have a big open area of mulch in your garden. Nature doesn't want that mulch there. It doesn't want it. It sees an opportunity. It's like, oh, open space, sunlight, water, it's all mine. Weeds, lots and lots of weeds. Okay. So it's about changing our mindset. It's working with nature, following Mother Nature's, just her plan. If something's going to fill in that space, why not fill it in with something that you want? And that was that aha moment. I'm like, duh, completely like, yeah, why are we spending all this time, labor, pulling weeds? You know, I know a lot of landscapers will actually just go through and spray chemicals to keep those spaces open. And there is a way to make your garden still look neat and tidy, but have those spaces filled. Because if you look at a wild field, you look at a forest, you have layers. And again, it's going back to those layers. You have structural layers, the big things that stick out that you notice that kind of bring your eye right to it.
Yep. We understand that some people Zooming may have lost the connection. If anybody's out there, can you send something in the chat that says you have a connection? Thanks. Go ahead.
All right. And then you've got underneath that, you've got your seasonal themes. You see how the colors change. This is one of the best parts, I think, of the Chautauqua Gardens. It's amazing to see the colors and what comes out May, June, and then July, August, and even September, October. You've got to see the gardens look completely different month by month because of these seasonal colors. And then the bottom one is the one that I don't always think about, that ground cover layer. What are the plants that are going to hold the soil in place? What are the plants that are going to cover that area? Are they native? Are they beneficial to our guys that we want around here? Our bugs, even our little mammals. Deer, I know they come in and eat a lot of stuff, but there's a way to make them happy too. So it's creating our gardens. You've got the natural way there, but creating our gardens is in that same mindset. You've got your tall, your medium, your smaller, even smaller things. And you've got stones and you've got some water. What can you put in your gardens to create more of a habitat? It's about building communities. Again, reconnecting, restoring those relationships. There you've got grass, a monoculture, not much as far as relationship goes. You're not going to find a whole lot of insects out there. Right? You've got a few trees, and even those don't look like they're very diverse. It looks like a bunch of maples and maybe a spruce. If you turn something, a park area, a little space of it, now look at what you've got. All those relationships, plus the color. And to me, it looks so much prettier. Do you have to do the entire lawn? No, because what's the great thing about Blue Thumb, size doesn't matter at all. You could have an entire wildflower field. You could turn an entire field into a native meadow if you want. You can just have a small little garden at your house. Even your planters can make a difference. What are you using in your containers here? Are they things that our native pollinators can utilize? Are they going to do any benefit to our native habitat here, our native ecosystem? So, I mean, putting parsley, mixing a bunch of parsley into a container, just sneak it in the back. You'll be amazed at the butterflies and the caterpillars that you get. And the Blue Thumb, I like to just think of it as the 3 S's. So how do we make water infiltrate? How do we get that runoff? How do we manage the runoff? Anything that you can do to slow it down, spread it out, and soak it in. Those are your 3 S's. And if you think about it, that's all you need to remember. How do I get that water? I see it You know, we might get some rain this afternoon. Chautauqua has a wonderful bubble where the rain just goes bloop, right around it. No matter how much I keep saying, come on, just give me like 5 minutes of rain so I can see if the rain garden's going to work. But what can we do? Where is water running off on our property? Where is it pounding down? How can we get it to slow down? How can we get it to spread out? Put it where we want it to go, and then let it soak in. It's the blue thumb principle. This was something I had heard about. Bluethumb.org is a partnership out of Minneapolis. It's fantastic. I had heard about it when I was doing the Master Gardener program and the Watershed Conservancy. I actually flew out to Minneapolis, did a couple of workshops with the Blue Thumb program, and just absolutely fantastic. The whole idea is to mimic the hydrology. So how does water flow through undeveloped land? It's restoring, so taking the development out of our developments, if that makes sense. But 4 key things that they focus on: rain gardens, shoreline buffers, turf alternatives, and one of my favorites, native plants. So all of these things, that's why it fit perfectly into the principles of Chautauqua Institution and the goals and the missions of Chautauqua Institution, because they already had all these when I started. It was fantastic. I'm like, yes, to find an organization to work for that, you know, values the same thing that you personally value is pretty impressive. And I love how Chautauqua Institution is a role model that really sets the bar and helps, you know, other towns, other places, other organizations come in to look, how do we do these rain gardens? How do we do shorelines? What are we doing? How do we use the native plants? What ones work the best? So rain gardens. This is the Bernstein Rain Garden down in Miller Park. You'll notice a little sign over here too. What's wonderful is not only is this reducing the rain, slowing it down, spreading it out, soaking it in, it's also been certified as a monarch way station, a monarch habitat, saying that it has the right plants for these monarchs. And if you want to see habitat restored, what was once just a patch of grass that always got wet and muddy because people drove through it, it's nice to see people don't drive through our gardens. Right? If it was grass, it would just be a destroyed little area, but people really are conscious of it, probably because they'd fall in with their vehicles. But to see all the birds and the butterflies and the bees and the little insects, the little guys crawling around in there, it's amazing. A rain garden, really simply put, it's just a bowl-shaped garden, something that's going to catch that rain, to slow it down. And we want it to spread out and to soak it in. So we put the rainwater where we want it to go. One of those aha moments, you know, years ago that oh yeah, that makes so much sense. Why am I out here watering gardens when there's all this rain that I have from a downspout going into a ditch that goes who knows where? If we put that water from our downspout into this garden, guess what? I don't have to water anymore. In fact, University Beach Hillside, that big giant rain garden, we watered it, you know, for the first couple months, once a week or so. They were the little plugs, and it's never been watered since. The power of native plants. So the runoff soaks in, waters all those plants, and it's just, they also filter out pollutants, restore wildlife habitat, and sure do make for prettier views as you walk around the institution and at your own house putting in a rain garden or a native plant garden. There are 31 throughout the institution currently. This is one down at the AMP when it fills in. The AMP gardens, when I saw those bowls, I'll get to it in a minute. I was very worried because of how deep they were, of what plants we could put in there. But lo and behold, you put some tall plants in the middle, you wouldn't know that right in there, it goes down about 4 feet. So that whole thing in a really heavy rainstorm can catch all the water from about a third, well, maybe a quarter of the amphitheater roof, and it will hold it, and then slowly it'll let it out. So we're catching that rainwater off the roof of the amp. Pretty impressive. Peck Rain Garden, this one's really neat. Right now it's a little wild, but that's the way I meant it to be. So right in the center though is the storm drain, and the Peck Garden is really fun. You want a fun activity to do on a rainy day? Walk out to the Peck Rain Garden, watch it fill up. because it fills up very quickly and you think, oh my gosh, everything's going to drown, and then it starts to overflow into that storm drain. So the whole bowl will fill up. And after the rainstorm and the water soaks in 24 hours later, you couldn't even tell that thing was filled with water. So the power, all that water that was rushing down Peck Avenue used to just go straight directly out into the lake. And now it goes into this garden and waters all those plants for us. The Kiblin Memorial Stormwater Park, an incredible transformation of an area that was just hard, compacted ground. 7-8 years ago, you would have walked through there and been lucky to even see, a fly in that area. And now you can go, you hear the bullfrogs going to town, you hear the birds, you see all sorts of little critters. It's amazing the transformation each year this garden makes, because in springtime you think, wow, did everything die? And then you realize, oh yeah, it did, because that's what plants do in the winter around here. And then they grow back. And to see how much a plant can grow in one season really is awe-inspiring. It's like my 10-year-old right now. I think, holy cow, wakes up and whoop, crazy. But this was, the garden was memorialized in 2015 to Ryan Kiblin, who was the supervisor of gardens here for many years and had it passed untimely in 2014. And the Bird Tree Garden Club endowed this section of it to make sure that this was her last big project she was working on. And I know she was passionate as well about the blue thumb gardening. She was a blue thumb gardener at heart. Miller Park, the rain gardens there. This is what they had started out looking like. And, people always say, why do you have a big thing of stones through there? I just tell them so that people ask me, why do I have a big thing of stones? But it is actually a way, again, slowing water down, spreading it out, soaking it in. Stones are a great way to slow water down. You put a bunch of stones, make a dry stream bed underneath the downspout, that's going to slow it down. If you give water a straight shot, it's going to carve things right out. You give it the thing where it has to go around all sorts of other stuff, it slows it down. But this is actually, we have a French tile drain underneath that all the way over to our storm drain, because this was a spot that really didn't drain well. And we wanted to make sure that a lot of the excess water went off. So we didn't get standing water in there at all. But so far, I've never, ever seen standing water in this garden. So thank goodness. But it's crazy. Like, you put in these little plants and then all of a sudden, boom, they just fill in. Plants are amazing. They can hide anything and really look pretty. University Beach Rain Gardens. The Turkish mud baths, I think they used to be called. We called it the Abyss because we just seemed to keep getting lost up in there. But to see the transformation of the grassy hillside into that was astounding. And my first year after we had put that in, it was, so in 2016, that spring, we're going through kind of weeding out, and all of a sudden we hear quack, 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 quack. Well, there was a mama duck who was so mad at us because we found her nest. So here was a mama duck who made a nest out of all the old bee balm seed heads. This huge nest with all these eggs. So then my crew knew, don't go near that. She'll come out. She'll tell you, stay away from my nest. But I thought, how cool is that? What kind of garden attracts ducks? Well, apparently the University Beach rain gardens do. So that made me happy because I knew, well, at least the duck is really enjoying it. But just the varieties, the colors, what you can do with our native plants, with our, people always think, oh, natives, oh, are they going to be just wild? No, it doesn't mean that they're wild. It means that they're great for this area. They're meant to be here. They're going to do the best in your gardens as compared to others. So really, such a huge transformation. And all because we are just trying to figure out ways to slow water down off of Prospect, make it spread out and let it soak in before going right down into the lake. Another beautiful view. The AMP. Well, I thought they were just going to have a huge rain garden in the middle when it started. Wow, now that's a rain garden. But no, I guess they put some seating in there for everybody. But that's the rain garden that I was talking about, one of the rain gardens, where it takes, you can see a little tube down there, and there's going up that left-hand side is a downspout. That's a direct flow. So that's the water comes off the roof right into it. On Friday, I will be doing a tour of the Amp, Odlands, and Carnahan Jackson Garden as part of the Bird Tree and Garden Club's season. So 10:30, we'll meet down at Odlands Plaza, 10:30 to 11:30. Every Friday, I'll be doing garden tours at different places. So if you want to know more, you want to see these gardens a little more up close, I invite you to come join the fun. This is what the garden looked like yesterday. I thought, oh, that's a good transformation. And you'd never know looking at it, that thing is 4 feet deep. So I always like it when I have new people start and I say, okay, go down in there and weed. And then they see it, another month later, like, wow, where do those plants come from? Yeah, pretty amazing. The colors, the varieties, what that brings in alone is impressive. Odlands Plaza, you can see here, there's a storm drain, just like in Peck Rain Garden. It will fill up to a certain point, and once it hits its maximum depth, then it overflows into that. And then it goes through another series of gardens and other things before eventually going out to the lake. There are actually 3 more in the making. You want to see this process in progress? Head out to the farthest reaches of the south end and on the hillside by the tennis courts. We've been making kind of the south end Grand Canyon. We have one in the north of the University Beach hillside. This is becoming the Grand Canyon of the south. I'm doing it this year in a different style of planting that I've ever done, all based on that planting in a post-wild world. So it's a fun trial by error and see how it goes. So far, the first round of plants have stayed through the first big rainstorms. But you see, you've got 3 different levels of gardens. Each one will fill up, then overflow to the next, and then overflow to the one below it. And the grid on there is this matrix style of planting. So we have put in all those structural plants so far. And it looks like the gardens are filled with these little plugs. I have 1,100 more plugs that my crew is going to be putting in today and tomorrow. So to think that, the gardens already look full, it's a different mindset for me, completely different mindset for me to be planting this many plants in these gardens, but it's all about those different layers. We put in our structural plants. I have one garden with the seasonal theme, some of the seasonal theme plants in there. We have the ground covers and the fillers left to put in there, and it'll be just absolutely transformed. Our goal is to have colors from May until October, and it's all a native meadow, all native plants to this area. Some we haven't used throughout the grounds anywhere else. So we're trying it out to see how they work. Another great perk about this job is that I have over 250 acres that I can play with and experiment. Mad scientist lab. Here's some of the half of my crew this year. Really happy that they're out there in the hot sun planting. And I was so happy we got it formed up because after the last real heavy rainstorm last week, they did what they were supposed to do. And I said, okay, now we can plant the rest of the plants. I didn't want to plant them all until we made sure that it was sized right, because if you don't size it right, then it kind of goes over and kind of smushes everything out. And it's a big hassle to have to go back and replant. So now we're good to go, and a lot more plants are going in. The shoreline buffers all throughout the institution, we really, again, using those native plants, using things that have deep roots to hold it in. Anything that we can put in before the lakefront will help slow that water down, spread it out, let it soak in, get those nutrients, the excess nutrients, get the pollutants out of there. So the one at Children's Beach, this is what they used to look like. So when you go down by the hotel, I want you to just put this picture in your mind when you look out at the lake, because this is what the lakefront, the buffers had looked like. But it's been a couple of years since we've been able to get in there because everything was shut down and we had docks and boat lifts and everything else in there. So it will come back, 10, 11 years from now, it'll look just as pretty. We'll try. But what a view. I mean, imagine if that was just grass looking out at the lake. What a difference of a view that gives you. How pretty. Another thing they talk about with the blue thumb, just alternatives to turf. Is there some place on your property that it doesn't have to be your whole lawn? I'm not saying go and just put a wildflower field for your whole lawn, but maybe there's a spot that you can change it. Maybe there's a spot that you could put, all clovers or some type of little bit of Oh, there's a whole bunch of plants they list. Something that brings in the pollinators, things that flower, that little flowers, creeping thyme, things like that, that will cover it so you don't have grass. You don't have to mow it. They call these no-mow lawns freedom lawns, and I'm starting to really appreciate that sentence because like they're that phrase because yeah, it gives you a lot of freedom. You don't have to mow. You don't have to worry about weeding. You don't have to worry about pesticides, doing any type of chemicals because guess what? That's the way it's supposed to be. It's for your pollinators. Or maybe there's low maintenance grasses, some that you only have to mow once a summer, or maybe twice a summer if you really prefer. But you could also just let them go and to watch the breezes and watch how they move and dance in the wind. There's perennial ground covers. You could convert your whole lawn or a patch of your lawn, a strip of your lawn into a perennial ground cover. This one, you get strawberries too. Woohoo! There's a lot of great resources out there that tell you what, and the bluethumb.org, that website will list out all sorts of different types of ground covers, low maintenance grasses that you can use, the things for pollinator lawns. So you could try it out, see what works for you. The native plants, whatever you're doing, this is kind of the key thing that you're thinking, how can I put native plants into my garden? Why? Well, they're adapted to this. They're adapted to our local climate. We had 2 really late frosts, late snows this year. And it was amazing because the native plants, I was wondering why they weren't coming up. Some of our plants, I'm like, oh my gosh, did they all die off in 2020 as well? And you know, what's going to happen? No, they just knew. They knew it was going to be cold, so they didn't come up yet. They were smart. They stayed down there. Now, after there was enough rain and after it's warm enough, boy, have they just popped out and filled in everywhere. They reduce your water. You don't have to water them. Native plants naturally have deeper roots based on this climate. They know they need to get down there because we have, you know, periods of drought in the summer. They're very deep rooted. They provide that food and habitat. Restoring the ecosystem functions, returning those relationships, the communities, increasing biodiversity, the variety of life, right? The gardens, bringing in those varieties. I like this here because look at that. That's your grass. You wonder if your grass is slowing water down, allowing it to spread out, soak in. Look at 9-bark's roots, 16, 17 feet. Black-eyed Susans, 7 feet. Your regular grass, about 2 inches. That's not going to hold much. And when you go, it's about, you know, sometimes people will go out and they want to plant a native, but then they don't plant the right plant in the right spot. That's Lake Erie. This is a palm tree. Perfect example. Not the right plant, not the right spot. Yeah. So when you go to pick your native plants, think of what it is that you want, where it's going to be, and you know, in your mind, think about how much you're increasing your habitat. You've increased your textures, your shelters, the resources for all those little critters. And then with your plant selections, really think of that late season. For up here anyway, our late season blooms are probably the most important for some of our pollinators and our bird species, our native pollinators, native bird species. So the gardens have transitioned over the years throughout the grounds. Instead of focusing on 9 weeks of color, we now have May or April through October of color. Trees, shrubs, perennials, get those layers, get those heights, get the vertical, because it really comes down to all we need to do is a few little changes. And if we all make one little change, we really, really can accomplish a lot. We're not asking to do, you know, go out and convert your entire property. Just make one change or go out and tell somebody something you've learned here today. That alone makes a huge difference. And I ask everyone, like I just said, the blooms from April through October. In fact, September and October are probably one of my favorite periods of the year throughout here because of just the abundance of color in every garden. So please come out and explore the gardens in every season. All right. Thank you very much. What a great audience. Yes.
Thank you so much. I hated to stop it. We do want to allow a chance for people to ask questions. If you do come up and we'll give you the mic, I want to make one announcement. Next week, Dr. Paul Nardine will go from water to air, and he will talk to us about how atmospheric carbon dioxide affects our climate. So we're going to try to cover a little bit more in the whole climate issue. Any people want to start here? Well, Mary, let me just hand you the mic. How are we doing?
Betsy, thank you very much. It was very informative. Do you have to do anything special to the soil if you're just trying to plant a garden that is of local plants?
So the question, I believe the Zoom people can still hear, was, do we need to do anything special to the soil if you're going to plant native plants? And technically, no, because your native plants should be all set, and like your native soils are going to be the best thing for your native plants. In fact, that's what will ensure that those guys thrive. Sometimes if you have too much fertilizers and other things, that actually makes the weeds and other guys come up instead. So yeah.
Okay, I'm getting ready to redo my whole yard, so this is perfect timing. What is the best fertilizer then? Like if I hire Westfield and I say I would like organic fertilizer, is there a brand? And also I'm horrified that you can still buy phosphorus products like at Tops and all over, where I've heard that the phosphorus is causing problems and the like. So what are some of the things we can do to help this whole cause?
Thank you.
So again, for the Zoom people, if anyone's still on, the question was about fertilizers and what should you use, what shouldn't you use, and what to do about all the ones that have phosphorus that are in them that are still being sold. And that's where the phosphorus issue, just educating yourself, knowing that does run off. There are cases where phosphorus is absolutely needed for plants, including grass. Cornell does the soil testing to let you know if you do need it. And if something isn't working in your garden, getting a soil test, having a soil test done is probably your best bet. I know the Master Gardener Helpline does a free soil test for pH. And then if there's something specific or it's, you want to have further testing done, Cornell will do that as well. As far as fertilizers go, anything naturally derived with, it depends. If you're having a landscape company come in, just having them, when they're doing it, amending it with a good quality compost is your best bet. When we fertilize our annuals or out in some of our new plantings, we use a thing called Nature Source, Daniel's Nature Source. So it's all naturally derived. But again, it comes down to, even if you're using a fertilizer, using it properly is the key to anything. Knowing how much to use and when to apply it, because a lot of times people will go out and just apply it any time, and then all of a sudden a big rain comes. And on the label, it'll say, do not apply if heavy rains are predicted for the next 24 hours. So just, again, knowing that you want to check what there is on the label, how to use it, how to apply it, and whether or not you truly do need it is a big part of fertilizers.
Okay, it's going to be Larry and then Bob. If you have a suggestion for how we can do this better, especially the people out there in Zoom land, please let us know. This is, has been a bit of an experiment. We're really grateful that you've been so kind about it. Thank you, Larry.
Are you available for consultation?
Well, normally I would say absolutely. It just depends. This year I have a very reduced staff following a really almost no staff last year. So I'm kind of filling in and doing a lot more within the gardens themselves. But I am more than happy, because of how passionate I am about this. I am more than happy to come out to places and say, it might not be exactly when you want it, but I love to come out and say, yeah, this would be a good one for this, or even just giving you a list of some good natives for your property. Not to go back to the Blue Thumb thing, but bluethumb.org does have a native plant list of like a plant selector. So you can put in, I want a yellow blooming flower in July for full sun, and it'll list out. And the Blue Thumb program, because it's from Minneapolis, a lot of the natives that are listed there are also natives for this area. So it's very handy. And the University of Connecticut has a rain garden app that has a fantastic plant selector feature as well. I do have, before I give it Bob for the last question, I did bring a few handouts. I have a thing that I had made with Master Gardeners years ago about rain gardens. If you're interested in the Chautauqua Institution rain management, there's also some native plants for dry soils and shade and sun, or wet soils. So if you'd like that, feel free to come up and take some after the thing.
Thank you. The Blue Lake is part of our tourist attraction and incredibly important. Driving on 394, the green of the golf course is so beautiful also, but I can imagine, I don't see lots of things stopping the water from, how do we manage the golf courses in the area so that they are an attraction for tourists, but don't just pollute the lake?
Great question. It came back to you with golf courses. How do you know, you've got the bright green, and Trevor and his crew up there, again, working with the institution, they have installed a lot of different retention areas to help capture that water so that the top of the hill and the greens can stay green. And then at the bottom of the golf course, so along Route 394, you see a few different areas that look wild, and they're, you know, well, those are also huge rain garden areas, bioswales that will capture the water and slowing it down. And then just as you go through the South Gate and along Massey Avenue, there's a big giant retention area in the woods, another place to slow that water down. So and Trevor has really kept up on knowing what and when to apply. And golf courses, farmers, they're kind of in the same boat. They don't want to spend more money than they need to. So they are not out there putting excess fertilizers on. They are putting what is needed. They're very good at testing. And that's the same thing. Homeowners, we tend to be the ones that just go out and apply willy-nilly without really doing it absolutely correctly. But having trainings, having the institution as a role model, hosting different events, workshops for golf courses, for municipalities to come out and see different things that we're doing throughout the grounds, really becoming that leader in lake management as we are going forward, I think is fantastic. And making sure that all the different parties like golf courses and other partners, who else should we include in different workshops and different conferences and other things that we may host in the future. So great thing to point out.
Would you say a few words about invasive species? Like we have Japanese knotweed on our property.
Oh, where to begin with invasive species? Oh, don't plant them, please, 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 please. Yeah, it is rough, and it's not just plants too. In fact, probably one of the worst invasive species that I've encountered right now, other than emerald ash borer, has just taken hold, not to scare you guys or to freak you out, but the Japanese invasive jumping worm is horrible, and he's wreaking havoc in our gardens. Nothing we can do. I've been talking to the University of Wisconsin to see what their trials are. They're gross, they're big, they wiggle like crazy, and they devoid the garden of nutrients. So it's kind of one of those catch-22s. You have to add nutrients in order for the plants to survive, but if you add the nutrients and the worms go crazy and have a real big field day, making lots more worms, but it turns your soil into coffee grounds. So invasive plants, invasive species, the biggest thing is knowing, okay, if you're going to get a plant, why are you planting it? Where's it coming from? You know, what's in the soil of that plant? Because they said these Japanese jumping worms have come in a lot of times from the potting soil in other places, people throwing their pots out into the woods at the end of the season. It just, I don't know at what point invasives become the new naturalized species, but I hate to say it's almost like a losing battle with Japanese knotweed. The best thing you can do with any type of invasive is pull it, get rid of it. As soon as you see it trying to pull it, if you can't pull it, cutting it before it goes to seed. the privet shrubs, the even butterfly bushes. I know a lot of people love them, but they are invasive. They are an invasive species. Our climate, as it is right now, has been doing a good job of killing off all the seedlings, but we're real close to not doing that. And we're going to have explosions of butterfly bushes in our woods very soon. Barberry, just making sure, again, it comes down to education, knowing what is and isn't. The DEC came out with a list, the Department of Environmental Conservation came out with a list of invasive species and things that are prohibited, that are regulated. The privet is a prohibited species. You can't do that anymore. You can't plant that. Burning bush is also on the regulated list. So again, if you already have invasives on your land, don't freak out. You don't have to go rip everything out. Be aware that it's there, make a plan for it. And if you cannot pull it out or remove it, make sure the seeds are cut off as soon as you see them. All right. Yeah, again, educating and trying to make sure you know what is there. And it's hard for us right here in the corner of Western New York, because what is regulated and prohibited in New York State is still being sold by nurseries in Pennsylvania. Technically, when they cross that border, they're breaking the law, but who's there to say no? So again, it comes down to the homeowner knowing what that landscaper is putting in. And a lot of times, and I'm really impressed and proud to know that when people are going to put in a landscape around here, I'll get an email that'll say, hey, so-and-so wants to put this, suggesting these plants. Are any of these things that we shouldn't put in? I am more than happy to say, yeah, no, that's not a good idea. But even the landscapers and the gardeners around here, they're really becoming knowledgeable about what they should and shouldn't plant. But again, it comes down to the homeowner. If the homeowner says, I don't want any invasive species, I don't want anything that's even a potential, then that's what the landscaper is going to listen to. So yeah, invasives. Oh, so sad.
Let's give a round of applause to Betsy Burgeson. Thank you.